The execution block stood cold and dark in the center of the alien courtroom. Maya Chen knelt before it, her hands bound behind her back with energy shackles that hummed with power. Around her, thousands of alien beings filled the massive chamber, their eyes fixed on the human girl who had somehow managed to anger the entire Galactic Council. The Zephyrian judge towered above her, its crystalline body reflecting the harsh lights of the chamber. Its voice echoed through translators as it spoke the final words of her sentence.
Maya Chen of Earth, you have been found guilty of the highest crime against galactic law.
You destroyed the sacred breeding grounds of the Vorthan Empire, caused the economic collapse of 3 solar systems, and murdered Ambassador Crix in cold blood. Maya lifted her head, her dark eyes burning with defiance even as the executioner approached. I did what I had to do, she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. And I'd do it again. The crowd erupted in angry shouts and alien curses. The judge slammed its gavel, a sound like breaking glass that silenced everyone instantly. The sentence is death by beheading, followed by the ancient ritual of dragon offering. Your body will be fed to the great worm of Kepler 442b as punishment for your crimes. Maya had heard of this ritual during her 3 months in the galactic prison. The great worm was a massive creature, older than most civilizations, that lived in the molten core of a distant planet. For centuries, the worst criminals in the galaxy were offered to it as food. No one who entered its domain ever returned. The executioner raised its weapon, a blade made of pure energy that could cut through anything. Maya closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of the blue skies and green forests she would never see again. She thought of her family, her friends, and the mission that had brought her to this moment. 3 years ago, she had been just another pilot in Earth's first interstellar exploration program. Humanity had only recently joined the galactic community, and they were eager to prove themselves worthy of membership. Maya had volunteered for a deep space mission to explore uncharted systems and make peaceful contact with new species. Everything changed when she discovered what the Vorthons were really doing in those distant star systems. The breeding grounds weren't for their own species. They were massive prison camps where they kept intelligent beings from dozens of worlds, using them as breeding stock for their genetic experiments. Maya had seen the horror with her own eyes. Children barely old enough to walk being subjected to terrible procedures, their screams echoing through the metal corridors. She had tried to report it through proper channels, but Ambassador Crix had silenced her. The corrupt official had taken bribes from the Vorthons to keep their crimes secret. When Maya threatened to expose everything, Crix had her arrested on false charges. That's when Maya decided to take matters into her own hands. She escaped from custody, stole a military ship, and returned to the Vorthan breeding grounds. She couldn't save everyone, but she could make sure no one else would suffer there. The explosions had lit up 3 star systems, and Maya had made sure every major news network in the galaxy saw the footage of what the Vorthans had been hiding. Crix had tried to stop her from broadcasting the evidence, and in the struggle the ambassador had fallen to his death from the top of his tower. Maya had been captured shortly after, but the damage was done. The truth was out. The energy blade hummed as it descended toward her neck. Maya kept her eyes closed and waited for the end. But instead of the quick slice she expected, she heard a gasp from the crowd. She opened her eyes to see the executioner frozen in place. The blade stopped just inches from her throat. "Wait!" a voice called out from the judge's platform. An elderly alien with tentacles instead of arms was reviewing a data pad with growing alarm. "There's been a development." The judge turned its crystalline head toward the speaker. "What is it, Counselor Thresh?" "The investigation into the Vorthon breeding grounds has been completed," Thresh announced, his voice shaking. "The humans' claims were true. We've found evidence of genetic experimentation on over 2 million sentient beings across 17 worlds. The Vorthan Empire has been conducting illegal breeding programs for the past 50 years. A shocked silence fell over the courtroom. Maya felt her heart racing as she processed what she was hearing. They had finally investigated her claims, and they had found the truth. The judge's crystalline body flickered with confused light patterns. "This is impossible. Ambassador Crix assured us that the human was lying. Ambassador Crix was receiving payments from the Vorthan government," Thresh continued. "We found the financial records in his personal files. He was part of the cover-up." The crowd began to murmur, their voices growing louder as the implications sank in. Maya had been telling the truth all along. She hadn't murdered an innocent ambassador. She had killed a corrupt official who was protecting war criminals. But the judge raised its gavel again. Even if this is true, the humans still destroyed 3 star systems and killed millions of Vorthans. The sentence stands. No, Thresh said firmly. According to Galactic law, any citizen has the right to stop crimes against sentient beings by any means necessary. The human was acting within her legal rights. Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. After months of imprisonment and torture, someone was finally standing up for her. But she could see the anger in the judge's crystalline features. It didn't want to admit it had been wrong. The sentence has been pronounced, the judge declared. It cannot be changed. Then we invoke the right of challenge, another voice called out. Maya turned to see a group of humans entering the courtroom, led by Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, her former commanding officer. As representatives of Earth, we claim the right to challenge this execution. The judge's light patterns grew more agitated. The right of challenge was an ancient law that allowed any citizen to demand a trial by combat if they believed a sentence was unjust. It hadn't been used in over a century, but it was still legal. Very well, the judge said reluctantly. But if your champion fails, the human dies, and Earth will be expelled from the Galactic Council forever. Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward, her uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. We accept those terms, and we name Maya Chen as our champion. Maya felt the energy shackles fall away from her wrists as the crowd erupted in chaos once again. Maya rubbed her wrists where the energy shackles had been, hardly believing what had just happened. The courtroom was in chaos, with aliens arguing loudly in dozens of different languages while the judge tried to restore order. Admiral Rodriguez moved to her side, her face grim but determined. Maya, the Admiral whispered, we don't have much time. The trial by combat will begin within the hour. Are you ready for this? Maya looked around at the thousands of hostile faces staring down at her. Most of these beings wanted her dead, and now her life depended on a fighting tradition that humanity barely understood. What exactly am I fighting, Admiral? That's the problem, Rodriguez admitted. The challenger gets to choose, but they haven't announced it yet. It could be anything from a professional warrior to a savage beast. The judge finally managed to silence the crowd with several loud strikes of its gavel. The right of challenge has been invoked, it announced, its crystalline voice carrying a note of satisfaction. The Vorthan Empire will provide the champion. A massive figure emerged from the alien crowd, and Maya felt her stomach drop. It was a Vorthan war chief, easily 8 feet tall and covered in battle scars. Its 6 arms each held a different weapon, and its mandibles clicked with anticipation. Maya had seen videos of Vorthan warriors during her military training. They were born for combat, bred for centuries to be the perfect killing machines. The champion is War Chief Dracos, the judge continued. Veteran of 400 battles, slayer of the Crimson Pirates, destroyer of the rebellion of Tau Ceti. He has never been defeated in single combat. Maya swallowed hard but kept her expression steady. She had trained in hand-to-hand combat as part of her pilot program, but she was nowhere near the level of a professional warrior. Still, she had something the Vorthan didn't expect: human adaptability and the burning desire for justice. The combat will take place in the arena of justice, the judge announced. Standard rules apply. No outside weapons, no technological assistance, no surrender. The fight ends when one combatant is dead. Admiral Rodriguez grabbed Maya's arm as the guards prepared to escort her to the arena. Listen to me carefully, she whispered urgently. We've been studying Vorthan physiology since we arrived. Their exoskeleton is strong, but they have weak points. The joints between their arm segments, the base of their neck where it connects to their torso, and their primary breathing spiracles on their sides. Maya nodded, memorizing the information. What about their weapons? They're allowed to bring whatever they can carry, but you'll have access to the standard arena weapons. Choose something with reach and keep moving. Vorthans are powerful, but not as agile as humans. The guards, massive robotic sentries with glowing red eyes, flanked Maya as they led her through the corridors beneath the courtroom. The arena was ancient, older than most of the civilizations in the galaxy. The walls were made of some kind of black stone that seemed to absorb light, and the floor was covered in sand that had been stained dark with the blood of countless combatants. Maya entered through one gate, while War Chief Dracos came through the opposite entrance. The crowd above them was deafening, thousands of aliens cheering for the humans' death. Maya could see Admiral Rodriguez and the other humans in a small section of the arena, their faces tense with worry. In the center of the arena stood a weapon rack containing various tools of combat from across the galaxy. Maya studied the options quickly, her mind racing. There were energy swords, plasma whips, kinetic hammers, and dozens of weapons she didn't recognize. But at the far end, she spotted something familiar. A simple steel spear, probably left over from some primitive world's contribution to the arena. She grabbed the spear just as Dracos selected his weapons. 2 energy blades, a plasma cannon, and what looked like a net made of crackling electricity. The size difference between them was even more obvious now. The Vorthon towered over her, his 6 arms moving independently as he tested each weapon. "Begin," the judge's voice echoed through the arena. Dracos immediately fired his plasma cannon, but Maya was already moving. The bolt seared past her head, close enough that she could feel the heat. She rolled to the side and came up running, using the arena's curved wall to gain speed. The Vorthon warrior was faster than she expected. His 4 legs carried him across the sand with surprising grace, and his energy blades carved deadly arcs through the air. Maya barely managed to block one strike with her spear shaft, the energy blade cutting halfway through the metal before she could pull away. She needed to be smarter, not stronger. Maya feinted left, then spun right, using her smaller size to slip under Dracos's guard. She thrust her spear toward one of the weak points Admiral Rodriguez had mentioned, but the Vorthon's exoskeleton deflected the blow. Dracos roared in anger and swung all 4 of his armed limbs at once. Maya dropped and rolled, feeling the weapons pass inches above her back. As she came up, she noticed something important. The Vorthon's movements were powerful but predictable. He relied on strength and intimidation rather than strategy. Maya began to circle her opponent, keeping just out of range of his weapons. Each time he attacked, she would dodge and immediately counterattack, looking for openings. The crowd was getting restless, shouting for more action, but Maya ignored them. This wasn't about entertainment. It was about survival. The breakthrough came when Dracos grew frustrated and overextended himself with a massive swing. Maya ducked under the blow and drove her spear toward his side, aiming for the breathing spiracles. The point penetrated the softer tissue between his armor plates, and bright blue blood began to flow. Dracos screamed in pain and rage, dropping one of his energy blades to clutch at the wound. Maya didn't give him time to recover. She pulled back and struck again, this time aiming for the joint between his upper and lower arm segments. The Vorthon warrior tried to bring his plasma cannon to bear, but Maya was too close. She grabbed the weapon with her free hand and turned it aside just as it fired. The energy blast struck the arena wall, sending chunks of black stone flying. With her spear still embedded in his arm joint, Maya planted her feet and used all her strength to twist the weapon. She heard the satisfying crack of exoskeleton breaking, and Dracos's lower arm went limp. But the Vorthon wasn't finished. With his remaining good arms, he grabbed Maya around the waist and lifted her into the air. His mandibles opened wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. Maya still had one weapon left, her humanity. As Dracos pulled her toward his mouth, she grabbed the plasma cannon he had dropped and jammed it between his mandibles. The weapon was still charged, and when she pulled the trigger, the energy blast went straight down the Vorthon's throat. Dracos dropped her immediately, stumbling backward as smoke poured from his mouth. Maya hit the sand hard but rolled to her feet, grabbing her spear. The Vorthon was wounded but still dangerous, and she could see the fury in his compound eyes. The crowd had gone silent, shocked that the small human was actually holding her own against their champion. Even the judge leaned forward in its seat, its crystalline body flickering with surprise. Maya knew she needed to end this quickly. Her strength was fading, and Dracos still had several functional weapons. She took a deep breath and made her choice. Instead of staying defensive, she would go on the attack. She charged straight at the wounded Vorthon, using his moment of surprise to close the distance. Dracos swung his electric net, but Maya slid under it on her knees, her spear aimed upward. The point found its target, the soft joint at the base of his neck. This time she didn't stop with one thrust. Maya drove the spear deeper, twisting and pushing until she felt it penetrate something vital. Dracos made a gurgling sound and collapsed backward, his massive body hitting the arena floor with a thunderous crash. Maya stood over her fallen opponent, breathing hard and covered in blue blood. The arena was completely silent now, thousands of aliens staring in disbelief at the human girl who had just defeated their greatest warrior. The silence stretched on until finally, someone in the crowd began to clap, then another. Soon half the arena was cheering while the other half sat in shocked silence. Maya stood in the center of the arena, still holding her blood-stained spear, as the cheering gradually died down. The judge's crystalline form flickered with what seemed like confusion and anger. This outcome was clearly not what anyone had expected. "The combat is concluded," the judge announced reluctantly. "Maya Chen of Earth is victorious. According to Galactic law, her execution is hereby cancelled." The crowd erupted again, but this time the sounds were mixed. Some aliens cheered for the unexpected outcome, while others shouted in anger. Maya could see Vorthon officials in the stands arguing furiously among themselves, their mandibles clicking with rage. Admiral Rodriguez rushed down from the stands, followed by the rest of the human delegation. "Maya, you did it," she called out as she reached the arena floor. "You actually beat him." Maya let the spear fall from her hands, suddenly feeling the full weight of exhaustion. She had won, but at what cost? She was still stranded far from Earth, still hated by most of the galactic community, and still carrying the burden of what she had done to stop the Vorthon breeding programs. "What happens now?" Maya asked as the Admiral helped support her weight. "Now we get you medical attention and figure out our next move," Rodriguez replied. "The legal charges against you have been dropped, but that doesn't mean you're safe. The Vorthons aren't going to forgive this humiliation easily." As if summoned by her words, a group of Vorthon officials approached the arena floor. Their leader, a massive specimen with elaborate markings that indicated high rank, spoke in the clicking, chittering language of his people. The arena's translation system converted his words into standard galactic common. "This trial was a mockery," the Vorthon declared. "War Chief Dracos was poisoned. No human could defeat him in fair combat." Maya felt a surge of anger. Even in defeat, they refused to accept the truth. "Your champion was beaten fairly," she called out. "I used only the weapons provided by the arena, just like him." "Impossible," the Vorthon official snarled. "Humans are weak. You are nothing but soft-skinned primitives who barely deserve to breathe the same air as civilized beings." The insult hit Maya harder than any physical blow. For 3 years, she had endured this kind of treatment from aliens who saw humanity as inferior. They dismissed human achievements, human intelligence, and human worth without a second thought. "You want to know what makes humans different?" Maya said, her voice carrying across the now silent arena. "It's not our strength or our technology. It's the fact that when we see injustice, we don't look the other way. When we see innocent beings suffering, we act even if it costs us everything." She turned to address the entire crowd, her words echoing through the translation systems. "I destroyed your breeding grounds because children were being tortured there. Sentient beings were being treated like livestock, and your precious Galactic Council did nothing to stop it. You want to call that a crime? Fine, but I'll never apologize for saving lives." The arena fell silent again. Maya could see aliens throughout the crowd shifting uncomfortably, many of them avoiding eye contact. The truth about the Vorthon breeding programs had been made public, but most had chosen to ignore it rather than confront the uncomfortable reality. The crystalline judge leaned forward. "The human speaks boldly for someone who stands accused of genocide. The destruction of the breeding facilities resulted in millions of deaths. Military deaths," Maya corrected firmly. "Those facilities were heavily guarded by soldiers who were participating in crimes against sentience. I made sure that every civilian and every prisoner had been evacuated before I destroyed anything." She had spent months planning those raids, using intelligence gathered from rescued prisoners to map out the facilities. Maya had risked her life repeatedly to make sure that only the guilty would suffer, but the galactic media had painted her as a terrorist who killed indiscriminately. Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward. "If I may address the court," she said formally. "Earth's investigation into these events has been thorough. Our analysis of the destruction pattern shows that Maya Chen used surgical precision to target only military installations and research facilities. Civilian casualties were minimal and prisoner casualties were 0. Earth's investigation is hardly impartial," the Vorthon official snorted. "You would say anything to protect your savage." Maya had heard enough. The exhaustion and pain from the fight, combined with months of imprisonment and abuse, had pushed her to her breaking point. But instead of collapsing, she found herself filled with a cold, determined fury. "Savage?" she repeated, her voice deadly quiet. "You want to talk about savages? Let's talk about the Vorthon research I found." Children as young as 5 years old being subjected to genetic modification without anesthesia. Pregnant females from dozens of species being kept in cages barely large enough to lie down. Sentient beings having their limbs surgically replaced with mechanical parts to test your cyborg technologies. The Vorthon officials' mandibles clicked nervously. Those subjects were criminals, enemies of the state. They were families, Maya shot back. I saw the records. Entire bloodlines kidnapped from their homeworlds for the crime of having useful genetic traits. Scientists taken from their universities because their research was deemed valuable. Artists captured because the Vorthon Empire wanted to study creativity. She turned back to the crowd. I found files on over 2 million individuals. Do you know what the average age was? 16 years old. Children. Your great Vorthon Empire was experimenting on children. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the Vorthon officials seemed to have run out of words. Maya could see the impact of her revelation rippling through the crowd, as aliens began to truly understand what had been happening in those distant star systems. The evidence has been verified, Admiral Rodriguez added quietly. Earth has shared our findings with the Galactic Council's investigative committee. The full report will be released to the public within 48 hours. The judge's crystalline form flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. This court is not equipped to handle such serious accusations. The matter will be referred to the High Council for full investigation. No, Maya said firmly. I'm done with your courts and your councils and your committees. You've had 3 years to investigate these crimes and you've done nothing. The evidence is public now. Let the people of the galaxy decide for themselves. She looked directly at the Vorthon official. As for your Empire's complaints about my actions, I have a simple response. If you didn't want your facilities destroyed, you shouldn't have been torturing children there. The Vorthon's compound eyes glowed with fury. You dare to lecture us on morality, primitive? Your species has barely left its own star system. What gives you the right to judge civilizations that were building starships when your people were still living in caves? Maya smiled grimly. The same thing that gave me the right to destroy your torture chambers. I'm a sentient being, and I have a responsibility to protect other sentient beings from harm. It's that simple. Your arrogance will be your downfall, the Vorthon warned. The Empire has a long memory and longer reach. You may have won today, but this is far from over. I know, Maya replied. I've known since the moment I chose to fight instead of looking the other way. But here's what you don't understand about humans. We don't back down from bullies. The bigger the threat, the harder we fight back. Admiral Rodriguez placed a protective hand on Maya's shoulder. Are you threatening a human citizen and Earth representative? She asked the Vorthon official. I am stating facts, the alien replied coldly. The human has made many enemies today. Accidents happen, especially to those who interfere in matters beyond their understanding. Maya stepped forward, ignoring the pain from her injuries. Let me state a fact for you. If anything happens to me, my people will know who's responsible, and unlike your empire, humans don't forget their debts. The threat hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could see calculation in the Vorthon's eyes as he weighed the consequences of direct action against her. Earth was still a new member of the galactic community, but they had already proven to be unpredictable and dangerous when provoked. Finally, the Vorthon official turned and walked away, followed by his entourage. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. She had humiliated them in front of the entire galaxy, and creatures like the Vorthons never forgave that kind of insult. The judge struck its gavel one final time. This session is concluded. Maya Chen is free to go. As the crowd began to disperse, Maya felt the full weight of what lay ahead. She was free, but she was also marked for death by one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, and somewhere in the depths of space there was still a dragon waiting for a meal that would never come. The medical bay aboard the human ship was small but efficient, designed for emergency treatment rather than long-term care. Maya lay on the examination table while Dr. James Park, the expedition's chief medical officer, treated her wounds from the arena combat. The blue Vorthon blood had been cleaned away, revealing several deep cuts and bruises that would take weeks to heal properly. You're lucky to be alive, Dr. Park said as he sealed a particularly nasty gash on her arm. Vorthon warriors are engineered for killing. Their claws secrete a mild paralytic toxin that should have slowed your reflexes significantly. Maya flexed her fingers, noting the slight numbness she had attributed to exhaustion. How mild? Enough to give a normal opponent serious problems, Park replied. But your adrenaline levels during the fight were off the charts. Probably burned through the toxin faster than it could accumulate in your system. Admiral Rodriguez entered the medical bay, her expression grim. Maya, we need to talk. The situation has become more complicated. Maya sat up despite Park's protests. What's happening? 3 things, Rodriguez said, settling into a nearby chair. First, the Galactic Council has officially censured the Vorthan Empire and ordered them to cease all genetic experimentation programs. It's a huge diplomatic victory, but it also makes you an even bigger target. And the second thing? The dragon ritual, Rodriguez said grimly. According to Galactic law, even though your execution was cancelled, the religious ceremony must still be completed. The great worm of Kepler 442b was promised a sacrifice, and the priests of the old faith are demanding that someone be sent to fulfill the obligation. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard stories about the old faith during her imprisonment. It was an ancient religion that predated most modern civilizations, centered around the worship of massive creatures that lived in the hearts of dead worlds. The dragons were said to be older than star systems, possessing intelligence that bordered on godlike. Who are they planning to send instead? She asked. That's the third thing, Rodriguez said with a slight smile. They want to send a volunteer from Earth, someone who supposedly shares responsibility for your crimes. Maya's eyes widened. They can't force any of you to do that. They're not forcing anyone, the Admiral replied. But someone from our delegation has already volunteered. Who? Maya demanded. Rodriguez's smile widened. You, apparently. I submitted your name this morning. Maya stared at her former commanding officer in shock. You did what? Think about it, Maya. They expect whoever goes to the dragon to die horribly. It's supposed to be the ultimate punishment. But what if it's not? What if there's another way? Dr. Park looked between them with growing alarm. Admiral, with all due respect, this is insane. The Great Worm has never let anyone leave its domain alive. Sending Maya there is essentially a death sentence. Maybe, Rodriguez admitted. Or maybe it's an opportunity. Maya, you've already done the impossible twice. You exposed crimes that an entire empire wanted to keep hidden, and you defeated their greatest warrior in single combat. If anyone can find a way to survive a meeting with an ancient dragon, it's you. Maya considered this. The logical part of her mind screamed that this was suicide. But another part, the same part that had driven her to destroy the breeding facilities, was intrigued. What if there was more to the dragon ritual than simple execution? What if the ancient stories were wrong? What do we know about the Great Worm? She asked. Rodriguez pulled out a data tablet and activated a holographic display. The image showed a massive creature coiled around the molten core of a dead planet, its scales gleaming like metal in the intense heat. According to the historical records, it's been there for over 10,000 years. It's approximately 3 kilometers long, possibly longer since no one has ever seen its full length. The creature feeds on metal and energy, not organic matter. Maya studied the image carefully. If it doesn't eat organic matter, why do they sacrifice people to it? That's the question, isn't it? Rodriguez replied. The official explanation is that the dragon consumes the life force of its victims, leaving only empty husks behind. But there are no actual records of what happens to the people who are sent there. The ritual chamber is deep in the planet's core, and no monitoring equipment can survive the heat and pressure. So we don't actually know if anyone dies, Maya realized. Exactly. For all we know, there's an entire colony of supposedly dead criminals living down there. Or maybe the dragon is actually some kind of ancient judge that decides whether its visitors deserve to live or die. Dr. Park shook his head. This is all speculation. You're gambling Maya's life on theories with no evidence to support them. Maya slid off the examination table and walked to the porthole, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a creature older than human civilization, waiting for her arrival. The smart thing would be to refuse, to find some way to escape this obligation and return to Earth. But Maya had never chosen the smart option when the right option was available. When do I have to go? She asked. The ritual is scheduled for tomorrow, Rodriguez replied. The Galactic Council wants this matter resolved quickly, before the political situation gets any more complicated. Maya nodded slowly. I'll need some supplies. And I want a full technical analysis of everything we know about the planet's composition and the dragon's habitat. Rodriguez stood and placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. Are you sure about this? We could find another way. Earth's legal team thinks they can challenge the ritual requirement in Galactic court. And how long would that take? Maya asked. Months? Years? Meanwhile, the Vorthans are rebuilding their breeding programs in secret. And more children are suffering. No, Admiral. If there's a chance that this dragon might be an ally instead of an enemy, I have to take it. What if you're wrong? Dr. Park asked quietly. What if it really is just a monster that kills everyone who goes near it? Maya smiled grimly. Then I'll die fighting just like I would have in the arena. But at least this way, maybe I can learn something that will help other people in the future. Admiral Rodriguez activated her communicator. Commander Jung, prepare the diplomatic shuttle for departure. We're going to Kepler 442b. Over the next few hours, Maya prepared for what could be her final mission. The technical team provided her with detailed scans of the planet's interior, showing the complex network of tunnels and chambers that led to the dragon's domain. The heat and radiation levels were extreme, but the ceremonial armor, traditionally worn by sacrificial victims, was designed to provide some protection. Dr. Park fitted her with medical monitors that would transmit her vital signs as long as the equipment could survive the harsh environment. The signal probably won't last more than a few minutes once you're inside the core, he warned. But at least we'll have some data about what happens. Maya also received a small recording device heavily shielded against the electromagnetic interference common near the planet's core. If she survived, it might provide valuable information about the dragon and its true nature. As they approached Kepler 442b, Maya studied the planet through the shuttle's sensors. It was a dead world, its surface scarred by ancient volcanic activity and meteor impacts. But deep beneath the cooling crust, thermal scanners showed massive energy signatures that seemed to pulse with almost organic rhythm. The dragon's heartbeat, Admiral Rodriguez observed as they watched the energy patterns, or something like it. The shuttle landed at the entrance to the ceremonial complex, a structure built directly into the planet's crust by unknown hands millions of years ago. The architecture was unlike anything in the Galactic database, with flowing lines that seemed more grown than built. Maya suited up in the traditional ceremonial armor, feeling the weight of the metal plates as they settled around her body. The armor was surprisingly comfortable, designed with joints and padding that allowed for natural movement. More interesting was the material itself, which seemed to absorb and reflect heat in ways that regular metals couldn't. Maya, Admiral Rodriguez said, as they stood before the entrance to the tunnels. Whatever happens down there, know that humanity is proud of what you've accomplished. You've shown the galaxy that humans won't stand by while innocents suffer. Maya checked her equipment one final time. The recording device was securely attached to her armor, and the medical monitors showed green lights across the board. If I don't come back, make sure the truth about the Vorthon facilities gets out to every world in the galaxy. Don't let them cover it up again. You have my word, Rodriguez replied. Maya took a deep breath and stepped into the tunnel. The ancient stone walls were warm to the touch, and she could feel the planet's heat increasing with every step downward. Behind her, the entrance sealed itself with a sound like thunder. Cutting off her last connection to the surface world, she was alone now, walking through passages that had been carved by beings whose names were lost to history, approaching a creature that had lived since before humans had discovered fire. The tunnel sloped steadily downward, and with each step Maya could feel the weight of miles of rock above her head. After what felt like hours of walking, she began to see a red glow emanating from somewhere ahead. The temperature had risen to nearly unbearable levels, but the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. The great worm's massive eyes studied Maya with an intensity that seemed to pierce through her armor, her flesh, and into her very soul. When the dragon finally spoke again, its voice carried a note of amusement that rumbled through the cavern like distant thunder. Talk? The ancient creature repeated. It has been many centuries since a sacrifice wished to talk rather than scream or beg for mercy. Most who come here spend their final moments weeping for their mothers or promising me treasures they do not possess. Maya kept her stance steady, despite the overwhelming presence of the creature before her. I'm not most people, and I don't think you're what the galaxy believes you to be. The dragon's head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed almost curious. And what do you believe me to be, Maya Chen of Earth? Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The dragon knew her name, though she hadn't introduced herself. I think you're a judge, not an executioner. I think this whole ritual is a test, not a feeding. A sound that might have been laughter echoed through the chamber. Interesting theory. What led you to this conclusion? Maya gestured toward the walls of the cavern. This place is designed for conversation, not consumption. The acoustics are perfect for speech. The lighting allows for clear vision. And the atmosphere is maintained at levels that allow organic beings to survive. If you really just wanted to eat people, you wouldn't need any of this. Continue, the dragon said, and Maya could hear genuine interest in its voice. The ceremonial armor? Maya continued, warming to her theory. It's not just protective gear. It's diagnostic equipment, isn't it? It's monitoring my vital signs, my stress levels, my psychological state. You're studying everyone who comes here. The great worm shifted slightly, its massive coils rearranging themselves with surprising grace. You are more perceptive than most. Yes, I have been studying your species, all species, for millennia. The armor tells me much about those who wear it. Their fears, their hopes, their true nature. Maya felt a spark of triumph. She had been right. So what happened to all the people who were supposedly sacrificed to you? The criminals and political prisoners who disappeared down these tunnels? That depends, the dragon replied. Some deserved their fate. They were truly evil beings who had committed unforgivable acts against innocence. Those individuals discovered that my reputation for consuming life force is not entirely undeserved. Maya felt her stomach clench. And the others? The others found a different path. Tell me, Maya Chen, do you know the true history of this place? Only what's in the Galactic archives. They say you've been here for 10,000 years, that you're some kind of ancient predator that feeds on sentient life. The dragon's eyes flashed with what might have been anger. The Galactic archives lie about many things, as you have learned. I am not from this world, nor am I a predator. I'm a refugee. Maya blinked in surprise. A refugee? My people were called the Architects. We were an ancient race that helped guide the development of younger civilizations, offering wisdom and protection to those who needed it. But power corrupts, and eventually, some of my kind became tyrants rather than guides. A great war broke out among the Architects, and in the end, both sides destroyed each other. The dragon's voice carried the weight of immeasurable sorrow. I was among the few survivors, and I came here to hide from those who would finish what the war had started. This planet was dead, its core cooling. But I could survive here by feeding on the thermal energy. I planned to sleep until the danger passed. But you didn't sleep, Maya observed. No, because the younger races began to find me, first as explorers, then as supplicants seeking wisdom, and finally as executioners seeking to dispose of their unwanted. I realized that I could serve a purpose here, acting as a final judge for those who claim to serve justice. Maya began to understand. You've been evaluating people all this time, separating the truly evil from those who were just inconvenient to their governments. Precisely. Those who came here bearing true guilt, who had committed crimes against innocence itself, found only death. But those who came here as victims of injustice, who had been condemned for standing against corruption and tyranny. The dragon paused meaningfully. Where are they? Maya asked. The great worm's response was not words, but action. With a gesture of its massive head, sections of the cavern wall began to iris open, revealing corridors and chambers that extended far beyond the main cavern. And from those openings, figures began to emerge. Maya gasped as she saw them. Dozens of beings from across the galaxy, representing species she recognized and many she didn't. They wore simple clothing and moved with the confidence of people who had found purpose rather than the despair of prisoners. At their head walked a figure Maya recognized from her studies of galactic history. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a human scientist who had supposedly been executed for treason 50 years ago. Maya Chen, Dr. Vasquez said with a warm smile. Welcome to the underground. Underground? Maya repeated, still trying to process what she was seeing. That's what we call ourselves, Vasquez explained. We're the ones who were condemned by corrupt systems for trying to do the right thing. The Great Worm has given us sanctuary here, and in return we work to help others who face similar persecution. Maya looked around at the assembled group. How many of you are there? Currently about 300, another voice replied. Maya turned to see a tall, crystalline being that reminded her of the judge from her trial. I am former Counselor Thresh Kanim. I was supposedly fed to the dragon 20 years ago for refusing to authorize the bombing of a hospital ship. I remember reading about that, Maya said. The official report said you had gone insane and attacked your fellow counselors. The official report said many things that were not true, Kanim replied with bitter amusement. Just as they said many untrue things about you. The great worm's voice rumbled through the chamber again. This is why I have maintained the illusion of being a mindless beast, Maya Chen. The corrupt leaders of the galaxy need to believe that their problems can be permanently eliminated. As long as they think their enemies are dead, they do not search for them. Maya felt pieces clicking together in her mind. You've been building a resistance network. All these people who were supposedly executed are still working to fight injustice, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. But now we do it from the shadows, free from the political constraints that limited us before. We gather intelligence, expose corruption, and help others who find themselves in situations like yours. Speaking of which, the dragon interrupted, your friends on the surface are becoming concerned. Your vital signs disappeared from their monitors some time ago, and they believe you to be dead. Maya had forgotten about the monitoring equipment Dr. Park had given her. The electromagnetic interference down here must have knocked it out. Indeed. Which presents you with a choice, the great worm said solemnly. You can return to the surface and resume your old life, knowing that you will forever be hunted by those you have wronged. Or you can join us here and continue your fight against injustice from a position where your enemies believe you no longer exist. Maya considered this carefully. On the surface, she would always be looking over her shoulder, waiting for Vorthon assassins or corrupt officials to strike. But here she could work to help others without worrying about political consequences or personal safety. If I stay, she asked, what would I do? What you do best, Dr. Vasquez replied. Fight for those who can't fight for themselves. We've been monitoring the situation with the Vorthon breeding programs. Your actions expose them, but there are others. Dozens of similar operations across the galaxy, all hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and corruption. We could use someone with your particular skills, Kanim added. Someone who can get inside these facilities and document the crimes being committed. Someone who isn't afraid to take direct action when necessary. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her. Each one represented someone who had chosen to sacrifice their old life in order to continue fighting for what was right. They had given up families, careers, and comfortable existences to work in secret against the forces of oppression. What about my people? She asked. Admiral Rodriguez and the others. They'll think I'm dead. Sometimes, the great worm said gently. The greatest sacrifice we can make is allowing those we love to grieve for us, so that we can continue protecting them from the shadows. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. The thought of never seeing Admiral Rodriguez again, of never returning to Earth, was almost unbearable. But she thought about the children in the Vorthon breeding facilities, about the innocents who were suffering while corrupt governments looked the other way. There is another option, the dragon added. You could return to the surface and work with us secretly. Continue your public life while helping us from within the system. It would be more dangerous, but it would allow you to maintain your connections to the outside world. Maya wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. How long do I have to decide? As long as you need, Dr. Vasquez replied. But understand that once you make your choice, there may be no going back. The path we walk requires complete commitment. The tour of the underground facility revealed a level of organization and sophistication that amazed Maya. What had appeared to be a simple dragon's lair was actually a complex network of chambers, laboratories, communication centers, and living quarters carved deep into the planet's core. The thermal energy that the great worm fed upon also powered an advanced technological infrastructure that rivaled anything Maya had seen in the official Galactic installations. Dr. Vasquez led her through a command center where dozens of beings monitored communications from across the galaxy. We intercept and decode transmissions from every major government and corporation, she explained. Most corrupt activities leave electronic footprints if you know where to look. Maya watched as analysts highlighted suspicious financial transfers, decoded secret communications, and tracked the movements of known criminals who had escaped justice through political connections. The scope of the operation was breathtaking. How do you get this information out to the public? Maya asked. Very carefully, Kanim replied from beside her. We have sympathizers in media organizations across the galaxy, journalists who ask the right questions, investigators who follow the leads we provide, politicians who suddenly develop concerned consciences at convenient moments. They moved to another section, where Maya saw something that made her heart race. A massive holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with hundreds of red dots scattered across it. Active oppression sites, Dr. Vasquez explained grimly. Everything from breeding facilities like the ones you destroyed to slavery operations, illegal weapons testing, and worse. We've documented over 400 locations where serious crimes against sentience are taking place. Maya stared at the display in horror. 400? But that's impossible. The Galactic Council would never allow. The Galactic Council is either unaware or complicit, Threshkanim said bluntly. In many cases, council members are receiving bribes or other benefits to look the other way. In others, they're simply overwhelmed by the scope of the problem and choose to focus on more politically convenient issues. What about law enforcement? The Galactic Peace Corps, the Interstellar Justice Division? Understaffed, underfunded, and often corrupt themselves, Dr. Vasquez replied. The scale of injustice in the galaxy is far beyond what any official organization can handle. That's why groups like ours are necessary. The great worm's voice echoed through the chamber from hidden speakers. Show her the success stories, Elena. She needs to understand that we are not merely witnesses to atrocity. The holographic display changed, showing a different set of markers in blue. Liberation sites, Dr. Vasquez said with obvious pride. Places where our operations have successfully ended oppression and freed victims. 67 major operations completed over the past 20 years. Maya studied the blue dots, noting that they were scattered across the galaxy in a pattern that suggested careful planning and coordination. How do you do it without being caught? The same way you did it, a new voice said behind her. Maya turned to see a being she didn't recognize. Humanoid, but with silver skin and large black eyes. We use precision strikes, careful intelligence gathering, and the element of surprise. Most importantly, we make sure the evidence gets out to the public before our targets can cover it up. This is Commander Zara 9, Dr. Vasquez introduced, former military intelligence officer for the Rigel Coalition. She was supposedly executed for refusing to participate in the bombardment of civilian targets. Zara 9 nodded to Maya. I've studied your assault on the Vorthon facilities. Tactically brilliant. Especially the way you used their own security systems against them. We could use someone with your skills for the larger operations we're planning. Larger operations? Maya asked. The holographic display changed again, this time showing a detailed schematic of what appeared to be a massive space station. The Nexus, Dr. Vasquez explained. It's a hidden facility operated jointly by the Vorthon Empire, the Draconian Syndicate, and several smaller criminal organizations. Intelligence suggests it's the central coordination point for their illegal activities across 3 sectors. Maya studied the schematic carefully. The station was enormous, easily the size of a small moon and heavily fortified. What exactly are they doing there? Everything, Zara 9 replied grimly. Genetic experimentation, slave trading, weapons development, and worse. Our estimates suggest that over 1 million sentient beings are being held there against their will. The scale of it was staggering. Maya had thought the Vorthon breeding facilities were the worst atrocity she would ever encounter, but this was orders of magnitude larger. How long have they been operating? At least 50 years, Threshkanim answered. Possibly longer. The Nexus is technically located in unclaimed space, so no single government has jurisdiction. The few attempts to investigate have been met with political pressure and convenient accidents. We've been planning an assault on the Nexus for the past 5 years, Dr. Vasquez continued. But the scale of the operation requires resources and personnel that we're only now beginning to acquire. Maya felt the familiar fire building in her chest, the same righteous anger that had driven her to destroy the breeding facilities. What would you need from me? Your expertise in infiltration and sabotage, Zara 9 replied immediately. But more than that, we need someone who can inspire others to action. Your trial was broadcast across the galaxy, Maya. People saw you stand up to the Galactic Council and win. You've become a symbol of resistance to oppression. A symbol that's supposedly dead, Maya pointed out. Which makes you even more powerful, the great worm's voice rumbled through the chamber. Martyrs inspire people in ways that living heroes cannot. Your apparent death at my hands will be seen as the ultimate injustice, proof that the system is irredeemably corrupt. Maya began to understand the deeper implications. You want me to stay dead so that my example can inspire others to fight. More than that, Dr. Vasquez said. We want to use your supposed death as a catalyst for a larger awakening. People across the galaxy are already questioning the official story about your crimes. When word spreads that you were fed to a dragon for trying to save children, it will spark outrage that our sympathizers can channel into action. Meanwhile, Zara 9 added, you would be free to work with us on operations that could save millions of lives. Starting with the Nexus. Maya walked closer to the holographic display, studying the massive station in detail. The challenge was enormous, but so was the potential impact. If they could successfully assault the Nexus and expose its operations, it might trigger the kind of galactic-wide reform that had seemed impossible just days ago. What's the plan? She asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled. That depends on your decision. If you choose to work with us, you'll help develop the final strategy. Your experience with the Vorthon facilities makes you uniquely qualified to identify weaknesses in their security. Maya thought about Admiral Rodriguez and the rest of the human delegation. They would return to Earth believing she was dead, carrying the news of her sacrifice to her family and friends. The thought was heartbreaking, but she also knew they would understand. They had seen her make the choice to fight injustice regardless of personal cost. There's something else you should know, Thresh Kanim said quietly. Your actions have already begun to have an impact beyond just the Vorthon situation. Reform movements are starting on dozens of worlds, all inspired by your example. People are demanding investigations into their own government's activities. The corruption you exposed runs deeper than anyone imagined, Dr. Vasquez added. We're seeing evidence of criminal networks that span the entire galaxy, but we're also seeing unprecedented cooperation between reform groups across species lines. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her. Each person in this room had given up everything they once knew to continue fighting for justice. They had sacrificed their identities, their relationships, their comfortable lives, all for the chance to make a real difference in the galaxy. If I stay, Maya said slowly, if I join you, what happens to my ship, my crew, my people? They return to Earth as heroes, the Great Worm replied. They carry with them the story of Maya Chen, the human who died fighting for galactic justice. Earth's status in the galactic community will be elevated, and your people will be seen as noble and principled beings who are worth listening to. Your sacrifice will protect them, Zara 9 added. The Vorthons and their allies won't dare move against Earth now, not when it would be seen as revenge against the homeworld of a martyred hero. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The decision was becoming clearer, though it remained one of the hardest choices she had ever faced. She could return to the surface and try to rebuild her old life, always looking over her shoulder and limited by political constraints. Or she could embrace this new identity, working from the shadows to save lives on a scale that would have been impossible before. I need to send a message, she said finally, to Admiral Rodriguez. She deserves to know that I'm making this choice willingly. Dr. Vasquez nodded. We can arrange that, though it will have to be coded in a way that won't compromise our security. 6 months later, Maya floated in the void of space, her specially modified armor providing life support as she approached the Nexus station. Around her, invisible to conventional sensors, moved a fleet of 50 ships crewed by members of the underground. Each vessel was staffed by people who had supposedly died, who had been sacrificed to the Great Worm, who had vanished into the dragon's domain never to return. Maya's armor was no longer the ceremonial gear she had worn to face the dragon. This was combat equipment designed by the Underground's engineers, incorporating technology salvaged from a dozen different civilizations. It made her nearly invisible to most sensors while providing enough firepower to take on a small army. Phoenix 1, this is Dragon's Eye, came Dr. Vasquez's voice through the encrypted communication system. You are cleared for infiltration. Remember, we need you to disable their security network before the main assault begins. Understood, Dragon's Eye, Maya replied, using her new codename. Phoenix seemed appropriate for someone who had risen from the ashes of her former life. Beginning approach now. The Nexus station was even more massive up close than the holographic displays had suggested. It was a twisted cathedral of metal and crystal, its surface crawling with defensive weapons and sensor arrays. Somewhere inside those walls, 1 million innocent beings waited for rescue, though most had probably given up hope long ago. Maya activated her armor's stealth systems and began her approach to the station's outer hull. The past 6 months had been intense preparation for this moment. She had trained with combat specialists from across the galaxy, learned infiltration techniques developed by a dozen different species, and studied every piece of intelligence the underground had gathered about the Nexus. More importantly, she had helped plan not just this assault, but a coordinated campaign that would strike at criminal operations across 3 sectors simultaneously. The Nexus was the centerpiece, but teams were already in position to hit 17 other facilities within the next 72 hours. Maya's armor locked onto the station's hull with magnetic clamps, and she began cutting through the outer plating with a plasma torch. The metal was thick, designed to withstand weapons fire, but her equipment was designed to cut through anything given enough time. As she worked, Maya thought about the message she had sent to Admiral Rodriguez through carefully encrypted channels. It had taken weeks to compose, balancing the need to let her former commander know she was alive with the necessity of maintaining operational security. The message had been simple. The dragon taught me to see clearly. The work continues. Tell Earth that Maya Chen's sacrifice was not in vain. Admiral Rodriguez was smart enough to read between the lines, to understand that Maya had found a way to continue fighting from beyond the grave. The plasma torch finally broke through the hull, and Maya slipped inside the station through the narrow opening she had created. According to the intelligence reports, this section should be mostly automated, with minimal security presence. But Maya had learned never to trust intelligence reports completely. She found herself in a maintenance corridor lined with power conduits and atmospheric recycling equipment. The air was thick with the smell of oil and ozone, and she could hear the distant hum of machinery throughout the station. More disturbing were the other sounds, faint but unmistakable, voices crying out in pain or despair from somewhere deep in the station's interior. Maya followed her memorized route through the maintenance tunnels, moving toward the central computer core, where she could access the station's security network. The tunnels were narrow and cramped, designed for maintenance robots rather than organic beings, but they provided perfect cover for infiltration. After 30 minutes of careful movement, Maya reached her target, a junction box that connected to the station's primary data network. She attached a small device no larger than her thumb to the junction. The device was one of the underground's most sophisticated tools, capable of infiltrating and subverting computer networks while leaving no trace of its presence. Dragon's Eye. "This is Phoenix 1, Maya whispered into her communicator. "Package delivered. Initiating network infiltration now." "Confirmed, Phoenix 1, we're seeing data streams coming in. The hack is working." Maya smiled grimly as she watched the device's status indicators. Within minutes, it would give the underground complete access to the station's internal systems, security cameras, door locks, internal communications, even life support controls. The criminals who ran this place were about to discover what it felt like to have their own systems turned against them. While the infiltration device did its work, Maya began moving toward her secondary objective, the prisoner holding areas. Intelligence suggested that the most vulnerable captives, including children and elderly beings, were held in the station's lower levels. If the assault went badly, Maya wanted to make sure these prisoners had a chance to escape. The corridors in this section were different from the maintenance tunnels. These were designed for organic beings with proper lighting and atmosphere, but they were also heavily monitored. Maya used her armor's active camouflage to avoid the security cameras as she made her way deeper into the station. The first holding area she found made her stomach turn. Dozens of beings from across the galaxy were packed into cells barely large enough to lie down in. They were connected to feeding tubes and waste disposal systems, kept alive but unable to move freely. Many showed signs of surgical modification, evidence of the genetic experiments that were the Nexus's primary business. Maya began attaching small explosive charges to the cell doors, set to detonate on her signal. Each charge was precisely calculated to destroy the locking mechanism without harming the prisoners inside. As she worked, some of the captives noticed her presence and began to stir with what might have been hope. "Phoenix 1, we have a problem." Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through the communicator. "Our infiltration has been detected. Station security is mobilizing and they're heading for your location." Maya cursed under her breath. The mission had been going too smoothly. She should have expected complications. "How long do I have?" "Maybe 5 minutes before they reach your area. We're accelerating the main assault timeline. All units begin attack run immediately." Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had carried her through so many dangerous situations. She activated the cell door charges remotely, watching as dozens of prison doors exploded open simultaneously. The freed prisoners began stumbling out of their cells, weak from captivity, but driven by the desperate hope of escape. "Can you hear me?" Maya called out to the prisoners. "I'm here to rescue you. Stay together and follow the emergency lighting. Help is coming." She didn't have time to do more than point them toward the nearest escape route before the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. Maya found cover behind a structural support beam and readied her weapons. The armor's targeting system identified 12 security guards approaching, armed with military-grade weapons and wearing full combat armor. The guards entered the corridor cautiously, their weapons sweeping back and forth as they searched for the intruder. Maya waited until they were fully committed to their search pattern, then opened fire with her plasma rifles. The first 3 guards went down before they could react. The others scattered for cover, but the narrow corridor limited their options. Maya's armor gave her significant advantages in mobility and firepower, and within minutes the corridor was littered with disabled guards. "Phoenix 1, this is Dragon's Eye," came the voice through her communicator. "Main assault is underway. We're seeing explosions throughout the station. How's your situation?" "Prisoner liberation successful in Section 7, Maya reported as she moved to the next holding area, continuing to secondary objectives. The next several hours were a blur of combat and rescue operations. Maya moved through the station like a force of nature, destroying security checkpoints, freeing prisoners, and gathering intelligence about the station's operations. Around her, the underground's assault fleet systematically dismantled the Nexus's defenses while broadcast teams transmitted live footage of the rescue operations to news networks across the galaxy. The evidence they gathered was even worse than their intelligence had suggested. The Nexus wasn't just conducting genetic experiments. It was operating as a processing center for a galaxy-wide network of criminal organizations. Slavery, organ harvesting, illegal weapons testing, and dozens of other atrocities were being conducted on an industrial scale. But they were also finding evidence of something else: resistance. Hidden throughout the station were signs that the prisoners had been organizing, planning their own escape attempts, and gathering information about their captors. Maya found secret communication networks, hidden weapons caches, and detailed intelligence reports compiled by captives who had never given up hope. "This is incredible," Maya reported as she downloaded files from a hidden computer terminal in the prison medical facility. "The prisoners have been conducting their own intelligence operation. They have detailed records of guard rotations, supply schedules, even financial information about their captors." "Can you transmit the data?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "Already uploading," Maya replied. "This information could